Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Stakeholder Whispering Live. My name is Bill Shander, and I'm sure most of you know by now. Some of you may be new, so I should probably explain. I wrote a book called Stakeholder Whispering, and the basic idea is that we do work for stakeholders, bosses, clients,
Mhm.
whoever. Oh, yeah, look at that. And when we do that work for them, they ask us to do things. And the premise of the book, which I think is true, is our stakeholders often don't know what they actually need from us. So rather than being an order taker and just jumping to it and doing that task, your job really is to whisper with your stakeholders to figure out what they actually need from you before you do it. Kind of makes sense, right? So,
Mhm.
anyways, in this series, I bring on guests, and today's guest is Alli Torban. She's a data visualization specialist, and she's going to share, as always, some anecdotes from her own experience at Stakeholder Whispering. So, Alli, first of all, thank you for being here. And if you could maybe give us a slightly fuller introduction for yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, etc.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Bill. It's exciting to be on here live. I love live. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm Alli Torban. I am in the DC metro area. I'm a data viz specialist. And what else? I just published a book. Well, late 2023. I guess that's not just, but a book called Chart Spark, which is about being creative in data communication. And I have a podcast called Data Viz Today. And I am a senior data literacy advocate at the training company called Data Literacy, where we do data viz trainings, data storytelling trainings. We just came out with a new data storytelling course, which I'm really excited about, which I illustrated a comic for. To illustrate how you create a data story in like a comic format. So that was really fun. So combining different ways to communicate data, that's what I fill my days with. And pickleball. I love pickleball.
And pickleball.
Fun
Now,
fact.
be honest, Alli, if it were up to you, would those priorities be reversed? Mostly
Yes.
pickleball and a little bit
Yes.
of data?
I
Yeah.
hope Ben, my boss, is not listening, but yes. If I could be quit and do pickleball all day, I would.
Yes. Most people who go into pickleball get pretty obsessive pretty quickly, from what I understand.
Yes. And I was sucked in just like everyone else.
There you go. All right, so that's good. So data, communications, and the comic
Yep.
is interesting. So I remember when you did comics for data literacy before you
Yeah.
joined the company, a few years
Hmm.
ago. Um, and doing a comic is actually a perfect example of stakeholder whispering. So this is a tangent. We didn't talk
Yeah.
about talking about this, but I'm just going to ask you anyways. You
Yeah.
know, I assume Ben came to you, Ben Jones, the founder of Data Literacy, came to you
Yep.
years ago and said, "Hey, make me a comic." And
No.
maybe no. Okay, so good. So this is
No.
like a stakeholder whispering moment
Yes,
right then and there. Tell
exactly.
us about that
Yes.
story. I didn't prepare you for that, but let us know.
Yeah, so I was freelancing at the time. So I guess this was 2020-ish, some 2021 maybe. And I had interviewed Ben Jones on my podcast Data Viz Today, maybe in 2018, 2019. He had come out with a book. I don't remember. He has a lot of books. I don't remember which one it is, but I was interviewing him about his book. So we had a relationship. And then he was trying to get experts to share their expertise on his blog on dataliteracy.com. And so he asked me if I'd like to contribute. And I was trying to think of ways to explain data literacy concepts that felt inviting to people who felt like data was not for them, because that's what Ben told me their goal was at Data Literacy. Hey, we want people to feel like data is for them no matter what. And I had really been getting into illustration, and I thought, actually, a comic would be a perfect way to bring some, like, sometimes you look at a comic and you're like reading it before you even know you're reading it, right? So I was hoping to
Yeah.
like suck people into data before they realize, like, oh, this is about data. No, I shouldn't read this. And I was inspired because my daughter at the time was very into graphic novels. So I was just sitting in the library thinking about waiting for her to find a book. And I was thinking, what could I do for this blog post that Ben wants me to write? And I thought, I saw her reading comics and how interested she was in it. I thought, oh, like this could be a perfect intersection of these two things. So that's where the
Yeah.
inspiration came from. And it has become so popular. We're hoping to make a book out of it soon so people can enjoy the data literacy concepts in comic format.
That's great. I love it. That's a great example. So what I did ask you to prepare is anecdotes, successes, and/or failures of stakeholder whispering. Your stakeholder didn't know what they need, and you help them figure
Hmm.
it out. Yay, I'm in. Hallelujah, everything worked out, or not so perfect.
Yes.
So if you could share one of those, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the comic because that was a success, but I have many, many, many more failures.
Yeah.
So the failure that I wanted to talk about was actually back in 2017. My journey, I was a data analyst for government clients here in the DC area. And then when I had my second daughter, I stopped working completely and I thought I'd be able to figure out parenthood by not working. Spoiler alert, you don't figure it out. But I was trying to figure it out. And during that time I wasn't working, I thought this might be a good time for me to pivot and try to find a career that I liked more. So doing data analysis type stuff. It was fine because I had a math degree. So I was like, I felt like that kind of fit technically, but it wasn't fulfilling in another way. So I was kind of experimenting with different things. I found data visualization and I thought I could maybe be a freelance data journalist so I could stay home with my kids and pitch stories to outlets, kind of combining this data that I already had, this background, with something that was a little bit more flexible in terms of schedule. So
Hmm.
2017, I was trying to pitch data stories to magazines and to news outlets. And I had pitched a story to a local magazine here in the DC area about what we in this area were Googling more than people in other cities. And the editor accepted it because like I don't know if you've ever tried, but pitching a news outlet, usually you don't get any kind of response, much less a
Yeah,
positive response. So I was so
that's true.
excited when I saw this email. I remember I was cooking dinner and I looked at my phone and this we would love to accept this story, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did it! I made it! I'm doing it! I'm doing it! I was so excited. And it's not like they were gonna pay me a lot of money. It was like this article was gonna be $150. So it's not like I won the lottery in that kind of a way, but I thought this
Yeah.
might actually work. Like I'm making the pivot. That's amazing. So I was really excited. We talked about the details. I was gonna get started on this project, doing the data analysis. I was gonna make some charts about this cool data, maybe make some maps. Um, and then I remember a couple hours later, I was in my daughter's room. She was like about barely a year old, and I was walking in circles trying to lull her to sleep. And then I saw another email ping on my phone, and it was the editor again. She was like, "Do you have time for a quick call?" And I was like, I don't know if this sounds good. And I hopped on the phone with her, and I could tell by her voice, like, this was not a good news. And she was like, "I'm really sorry, but I talked to my editor, and we're going to have to kill the story because honestly, what would anybody do with this information?" Like, yeah, it's kind of cool, like if uh, we're Googling pickleball more than this city, but like, then what, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's anyone supposed to do with that information other than, oh, that's interesting? So I was really disappointed. I thought, okay, yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not flying yet.
Yeah.
But I thought this has to be there's something missing, right? There's something missing that she didn't catch and I didn't catch. So what is
Right.
it? Because I don't want to be in the situation again where I'm like flying high thinking I got a story accepted, but actually not, and be disappointed. Because sometimes it was lucky in this situation because I could have started working on it and then it got pulled and then I didn't get paid.
That's true.
But at
As I always
least,
say, a quick no is almost as
yes.
good as a yes.
Yeah, so it was lucky in that sense, but I didn't wanna do it again where I could fall in this situation where maybe I did put a lot of effort into it, and then it got killed later because I was missing something. And the thing that I realized that I was missing was the "so what?" Like, what would anybody do with this information? And just because your stakeholder didn't catch that doesn't mean that that it's not a problem for you because it obviously was a problem for me later on because the
Yeah.
story was killed. And I'm sure you've found this too, Bill, where the project has ended even, and you finished and you feel like it was successful, but then nothing ever comes of it because you didn't
Yeah.
think ahead of time of the so what. You really have to connect the dots even from the very beginning, or help your stakeholder connect the dots. What is someone going to be doing with this? Why would anybody care? Is there a decision to be made, an action to be taken? How can we help them facilitate making that decision or taking that action? Where could they find more information? Why is this timely? Why does this matter now? Like all these things
Yeah.
that I should have been asking myself before I even pitched the story. And even if I did pitch that story, maybe I could have worked with the editor to think, okay, I have this story, this Google information, this data that I have, but what do you know of happening right now maybe in the city that we could tie this to? So like, hey, we're googling pickleball more than anybody else. Therefore, here's the top 10 list of indoor pickleball facilities that you could visit, right? Like
Yeah.
that would be interesting and useful to people. But I didn't connect those dots. I didn't ask those questions, and the story fell through.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So, the editor, as a news editor, could have framed the entire thing as, well, it's just a feature story. It's okay if it's
Mhm.
just informational and interesting and fun, because sometimes magazines will publish pieces like that.
Yeah.
But the other editor needed it to be more of like a traditional
Yeah.
newsy story that has a
Yeah.
hook, has a reason for existing, etc. And
Yep.
so, I think your lesson is very valid. And on top of that, there's also the lesson there about, I have a chapter called Peeling the Onion. You know, Stakeholder whispering by proxy is also very difficult. So you
Yeah.
whisper, even if you had successfully whispered this editor, the other editor above him or her would have been like a whole nother person to potentially say no. And unless you had the opportunity to pitch them directly, that's
Right, and
always
I
a
don't have
risk
access.
anyways.
I don't have access to that person, right? So how do I do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. It's
You kinda
always a
have to do it
challenge.
yourself sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes you can arm your stakeholder with the right tools so that they can then do that, but you're relying on them and their skills, which may not be there,
Mhm.
the same way that yours are, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can kinda save yourself at least a little bit of disappointment and heartache if you know ahead of time, "Hey, this is more likely to be successful if I do connect those dots at the beginning." And I
Yeah.
have found too that if I am in, let's say, a call with a potential client and I'm getting more information about the project that they want me to work on, if they can't help me understand what they're gonna be doing with this project and why it matters now, I have found it's more likely, even if I do accept that project, it's more likely for that project to, like, fizzle out. Because if there's
Yeah.
no strong reason why this needs to be done now, and, someone needs this for a particular reason, then as we're going through these iterations trying to find the right thing, first of all, it's gonna be hard to find what is the right thing, but then it's easy to just drop the project because other timely priorities come up. So I
Yeah.
have made that mistake again and again in the past, and I probably will make it in the future, but, not being super clear on what the main so what is of this project, what's the main decision, what's the main action, why is this timely? If I don't have a
Yeah.
really strong reason for that, I know now that the project is gonna be difficult or fail.
And like, in our world of data, like that happens so frequently, right? Because like it's such an
Mhm.
automated thing. Like, okay, we have data. Who's going to make the dashboard? Data dashboard. And it's like, okay, well, look, why does this dashboard need to exist? Who's going to
Mhm.
use it? What's it
Yeah.
for? What decisions are it's going to enable? And yeah, this happens constantly where people like crank out a bunch of dashboards and no one ever looks at them again for exactly that reason. I think that's critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Do
Um,
they want to look at it too? That's
yeah,
another thing.
for sure. Maybe if it was a comic.
Yeah, right, there you
uh,
go. Dashboard, we invented something new today.
exactly, a comic dashboard. Uh, how about a success? Do you have an example where there was a difficult situation, but you powered through it and had that amazing successful experience?
Yeah, I think that, the comic is a really good example of that. And also, I've noticed in the past, the times where the project has gone really well uh, is when I start out the conversation almost trying to convince the person not to work with me. Because I have
Mm,
found if I take that mindset, it sort of takes away the people pleaser tendencies that I have to be like, "Oh yeah, I want to do this project. That sounds great. Yes, 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 I can
Yeah.
do that." But if I'm trying to have the mindset of I don't want this project and I'm trying to figure out I'm not going to do this project. I'm just trying to help them figure out what their next step might be and maybe I can refer them to someone that I know. If I'm just thinking
Right.
in that perspective, then I'm challenging their assumptions and I'm trying to figure out uh, what their main goal is, who they're trying to talk to. Why wouldn't they try this cheaper option rather than hiring a consultant? Why don't you just download Tableau Public and have someone that already works with you create this free dashboard, right?
Yeah.
Why would you pay someone to do a lot of money to do this? Why would you spend so much time, your time and your team's time, trying to work with a consultant to figure this out? If I'm asking those kinds of questions, I have found that I can start off on a better foot with in the project because I have asked the hard questions without feeling, I guess, almost desperate for the project. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever felt like that, but like if you actually are desperate for the project, you're much likely to say yes and not ask the hard questions and challenge their assumptions.
It's very, very true. Yeah, I think people pleasing is a huge part of it. Desperation for the work is part of it.
Yes.
And it's interesting is that, one of my primary theories about stakeholder whispering is that, and it comes from Socrates. The Socratic method is you ask questions, and the goal is to push the respondent into a state of aporia, and the goal is to essentially
Mhm.
get them to be a little bit off kilter. There's a constructive tension there. It's like, whoa, whoa, what? And then that allows them to say, oh, wait, yeah, I never thought about that way. I could do this. I could do it this way, whatever.
Mhm.
And what you just described is sort of like that because you're immediately putting them off balance, not with that as the goal, but they're immediately like, "Whoa, she's not even trying to sell us right now. Oh, this is great. This is a good conversation. This is actually
Mhm.
it's more genuine and authentic." And so that lack of balance, that lack of just the expected conversation. We want this. Sure, I can do that. Sort of creates that opportunity for fresh perspectives. That makes sense to me. I like
Yeah.
that way of looking
Yeah.
at it.
And it's really important to make sure that the delivery of that comes across right. Because right, like if you're trying to kind of throw someone off balance and you're challenging their assumptions, it can come off as combative. But
Yeah.
if you're approaching it more like, hey, you're a friend and you're coming to me and I'm just trying to help you figure out this situation, then it can flow a lot better and people feel like, oh, I trust her. She feels like she
Yeah.
kinda has my best interest at heart. She's not just trying to make a buck.
Yeah. And that's it. Trust is the key to all of this. And yeah, if you're
Mhm.
trying to push them off of balance, it's never going to work. You truly do have to have their best interests at heart. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
stakeholder whispering is all about. Like I need to understand what you need from me. And if I really understand that, then we can find the solution. Yeah, maybe the solution includes me doing it. Maybe it includes your Tableau people. Maybe it includes 100 other options. But
Yeah.
you have to have that their interests, you know, really as the primary motivator. And that's what it's all about.
Mhm. Yeah, and you have a nice productive conversation, and even if it doesn't work out in that moment with you and that project, I have found that those people come back to you and like, "Oh, I remember talking to you. You were really helpful on this particular thing. Now we have a project that's actually a better fit for you. Can we
Yeah.
hop on another call?"
Yeah. And I didn't ask this follow-up question earlier, but I wanted to know, did you ever end up doing a story for that magazine?
I
Did that
did.
ever
Yeah, I
turn?
did. I did one about it was how how much more it costs to live within walking distance of a metro. So what I did was I did some isochrone analysis. So iso meaning same, chrone meaning time. So you can use there's some cool mapping tools where you can basically draw a circle around a metro and be like, what's the area here where I can walk to the metro within 10 minutes? And then I took that area and then looked up past Zillow data to see what the average price per square foot was. So that
Nice.
that that area compared to outside areas. So just kind of an interesting article to see, hey, here's a good neighborhood to live in if you are trying to get within walking distance of a metro, plus, not pay as much when you're buying or renting. So
Right.
see, that's useful, right? I can do
There
something
you
with that
go.
information.
For sure. Well, cool. This has been great, Allie. Thank you for being here. Any final words of wisdom? Like that little nugget of, yep, this is the key to stakeholder whispering, or anything else?
Yes. Yeah. Think about you as a teammate with your stakeholder. And I think that will change your mindset. You're not trying to make money. Even if you are, you really do need to make sure that whatever you can do to make sure you're not desperate when you're on these calls talking to stakeholders. And think of yourself as a team. The way you present your questions is going to come out completely differently, and you'll have license to ask the hard questions if you feel like we're on a team. I'm not trying to win this project. I really just want to find the right solution.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice for freelancers, like people who are trying to sell to a stakeholder. And I think it applies to employees also. Like for,
Mhm.
like the junior employee, well, like, all right, I'm not trying to win a project, but I do want to please my boss. But the same thing
Yes.
applies. Like, you're a partner. You're there for a reason. You're a partner at the table. You're trying to help your boss accomplish something. You're not their servant. You're not the order
Yes.
taker. You're a partner with them. And so same thinking applies, I think.
Mhm. Yes, exactly. Thanks so much, Bill. It's been
All right.
fun.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Allie. And for everybody else, we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye.